something strange has happened over at Fox News with Geraldo. In a recent segment, he actually attacked his co-hosts for being too pro-oil executive. Here's that video. Take a look.
I don't care if you blame Putin, the oil companies, or Joe Biden. What I really don't like is the partisan divide. And I've never particularly heard oil fat cats who are reaping record profits being their virtue extolled quite as eloquently as it has been here. I think the notion that we want, that the Democrats want intentionally high oil prices to make the country go green is preposterous.
They've said it.
They said it.
It
Yeah,
is
they did
preposterous.
say it.
They've said it.
Well, it is preposterous.
Believe your ears.
I believe that the oil companies are making record profits. Look to where follow the money.
Yeah, follow it all the way to Iran and Russia and maybe Venezuela. That's the problem.
And Park Avenue and Fifth Avenue and Wall Street.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa. Okay, so look, what he said, and obviously he said it in a very clunky way, but he's right about what's going on with gas prices. And by the way, not just gas prices, but you also have inflation in general. It's corporate greed. Yes, you follow it to Wall Street. You follow it to the oil executives. You follow it to the corporate executives and the fat cats. Yes, 100%. 100%. And by the way, this can be proven very, very simply. Why? All you have to do is just look at the profit margins. You look at the increase in profits despite the increase of inflation, because understand, there is supply chain issues. Those are real. Supply chain issues are real. There is a disruption, a small disruption in the oil supply, thanks to the war in Ukraine. So, you know, the fact that Russian oil imports are now banned, that also, of course, has an impact. The fact that OPEC plus countries are not increasing the oil supply, yes, that leads to a little bit of a tighter supply in the markets and does lead to some higher prices. Those are all factors that affect the costs of energy, as well as other things. Now, these companies, however, still, with the increased prices for the supply, have increased their profits by quite a bit. Now, they have not only passed the increased costs onto you, but have tacked on increased prices so that they can make what? Increased profits. That's what it is. In fact, they've increased their margins far beyond what they would have actually needed to sustain their previous level of profits. And so as the prices go up, you would expect in a functional market that their, profits would go down slightly to reflect the fact that, hey, look, we've had to increase, we've had to pay more for our supply. And so our profits have had to go down a little bit in order to, absorb some of that extra cost to kind of keep prices similar, or maybe we've had to pass it a little bit on to you. But that's not what's going on. They're not just passing the increased costs on to you. They're also adding on even more costs so that they can increase their profits. And so it's very, very simple what's going on. They're price gouging you. That's another term for what's going on. They're price gouging. And not only are they price gouging you, but they're blaming government spending. They're blaming the fact that you got a $1,400 check. Oh, look at all the money. Look at all the money we gave regular people. So much money in the money supply. And now, look, inflation. Inflation. No, the inflation is corporate greed. And by the way, to illustrate this, there are other companies. This is according to a recent analysis here. In fact, the top 30 companies in major industry categories of the Consumer Price Index have raised prices while collectively boosting their profits by a total of $151 billion. This is according to watchdog group Accountable.us. They compared, and this is real easy for them to do, they compared the firm's latest yearly and quarterly earnings reports with the previous year's filings. Now, those same companies bought back an additional $28 billion of their own shares. What does that do? Well, that increases the stock price, which is tied to executive compensation. And so they took all this profit from price gouging you while blaming inflation and bought back their own stocks, making sure that they take home even more money in executive compensation. And so now the three biggest firms, the food at home category, for instance, Walmart, Kroger, and Costco, saw their net incomes rise by a combined $238 million. Grocery prices went up to 8.6% in February compared to the previous year, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And so these are examples of these corporations and corporate greed playing a gigantic role into why you are paying more. This is not about you getting a $1,400 check, okay? This is not just about the supply chain issues, which are very, very real. This is about these companies taking advantage of the situation that is going on in the world and saying, we can make a few extra bucks by price gouging people and then blaming them for it. Well, I guess if you could get away with it, why wouldn't you do that? Once again, these companies have a fiduciary responsibility to maximize profits. To whom? Their shareholders. They don't have a responsibility to you. They have a responsibility to themselves and their own bottom lines. This is why we actually have to do something. For example, there's legislation which will not, get anywhere. But there's actually several different pieces of legislation. There's a windfall tax, which is basically what it sounds like. A tax on these windfalls from price gouging people. That would be nice. That would actually return some money to the American people. There's another idea that's been floated as well. Once again, no Republicans are going to go for it. A lot of corporate Democrats are not going to go for it. But there's even some legislation that might take money from oil profits and send it in a check, monthly checks, back to us. You know who else did that? Sarah Palin. In Alaska, she socialized the oil and made sure that checks got cut to every single Alaskan. And she had an 80% approval rating. Turns out populism and socialism kind of go together in a weird way. Very strange. But there's one more thing too, right? So now, look, unfortunately, the consensus in Washington to fix this isn't really a fix. Their fix is to get more oil. Drill, baby, drill. Or go and beg other countries for oil. In fact, the Biden administration is looking to strike deals with other countries, Venezuela, for one of them, tried to, contact Saudi Arabia, tried to negotiate with OPEC Plus in order to get them to release more of a supply. But that's not going to do anything. Okay? Getting access to these other oil markets is not going to remove the real problem behind this, which again is companies price gouging in order to increase their profits. Now, the Biden administration is also saying, this is patriotic. Paying more at the pump will support Ukraine somehow. No, it supports oil executives. And then, of course, you have Republicans on the other side that are saying, what we need to do, drill, baby, drill, bring back the plans for expanding the Keystone XL pipeline. But that's not going to do anything either. So understand, these are all non-solutions. None of these things will solve the high gas prices. Really, it's not an issue of not having enough oil. It's really an issue of greed. The United States is still one of the biggest oil producing countries in the world. But that oil is not ours. It's not American oil. It's the corporations We give it over our natural resources to oil companies, corporations that sell this oil after it's refined here, and we sell it on the world market. Hey, if you want to do something, I mean, there's a couple of different things you could do. You could nationalize the oil, for one. You could invest in green energy, right? And try to lessen our dependence on fossil fuels, which, by the way, fossil fuels are finite. Going back to the argument that they use, the Democrats want high gas prices to get us onto green energy. No, nobody wants high gas prices. What we're saying is that is the inevitable outcome when you have a fuel source, a energy source that is finite, like oil. And so, yes, we should actually invest in renewable energy because it's just a smart thing to do. Nobody's going to turn off the sun. The war in Ukraine does not affect the sun. It doesn't affect the wind. The wind keeps blowing. And so you can do these things. Unfortunately, there's no political will in this country because, well, what about the oil industry profits? Will somebody please think of the oil executives? They need our help, No, they don't. It is corporate greed. Geraldo, look, I don't know what's going on with Geraldo, but he's actually taken some good positions on certain things as of late. I don't know how much longer he'll be a Fox News host. Maybe he'll end up on CNN at some point. But as far as what he says, yes, follow the money. It's the greed.